Okay guys, how you doing? This is Jackie M here, and hopefully I am live. Just takes a couple of minutes, a few seconds. Okay, sorry, I'm just gonna wait to see that I come up. Okay, here we go. Okay guys, hi, this is Jackie M, and if you're watching this on Wednesday the 5th of July here in Sydney, Australia at 1:30 p.m. this is live, otherwise it's a vodcast. And thanks for joining me, and don't forget to share this around with your friends, tell them to hop over and watch this, alright? I get a lot of people complain about not watching me live. Sammy, how you doing? And it's a little bit complicated today because usually on Wednesdays I live stream a little bit later in the day, but I've got an event on later tonight, which I only found out about when I checked my schedule yesterday. And so this is 4 hours early, so hopefully those who've been complaining about never catching me live and made a point of catching me this evening got the word and are tuning in. All right, but yeah, so thanks for joining me. Just a quick shout out to Lenovo Australia. For the laptops I use a Lenovo IdeaPad Y700 for my live streaming, and I use a yeah, Nightbot. Let me go and fix it up. Hang on. Is it the Nightbot? Hang on. It says you're live coming up with vodcast. Hang on. Okay, sorry. I've got to change a couple of things. Hang on a sec. Disable, and enable. And what do I want to change? Yeah, in the description, I need to remove the fact that it's a vodcast. Okay. Sorry, hopefully this will refresh. It's very complicated. I'm going to make a point of not running my vodcast so regularly from now on because it's very complicated. Just let me refresh the screen a little bit. Okay, yeah, so it says it's live now. Thanks for letting me know. Yes, I am live. Let me just actually go to my Discord and tell people there that I'm live now, in case they forgot. Discord channel. Sorry about this. So it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to do this, forgot to do that. Where am I? Okay, this is my server. Live now. Okay, cool. Hopefully they'll get a couple more people on. Anyway, yeah, those of you who don't know me, my name is Jackie M, and I am a Malaysian-born, Sydney-based, Sydney, Australia-based, former Malaysian restaurateur, and now I do these live streams. And by the way, just a heads up, Noah is actually my 5-year-old child with Down syndrome is with me today, so he's just watching his show in the next room, so he might come out. Once he gets bored, I'm gonna have to just listen in to see how he sounds. Okay, what I'm going to make today, you've seen me make rice flour rolls, rice noodles and all that fresh, right? But today I'm going to use essentially the same recipe, but I'm going to make what we call rice cakes with it, okay? So same batter, very, very similar, just a matter of different ratios and all that, right? We're going to make these rice cakes that I grew up eating in Malaysia. And there are a few different variations to it because where I came from, which is Seremban, about 40 miles south of Kuala Lumpur, so basically the southern, if you can imagine Malaysia, it's like the peninsula of Malaysia is where the bulk of the population live, right? Kuala Lumpur is kind of like about halfway on the map, right? And Seremban is about 40 miles south, and Singapore is further south than that. So that's the kind of like influence that I grew up with cuisine wise. Okay, when you go further up north, then you get like Ipoh and Penang, and then above Penang you get essentially Thailand. Okay, so Penang food will have some crossovers with some Thai herbs and flavors and all that, whereas where I'm from down south would probably be closer aligned to places like Malacca and further south Singapore. Okay, so those are the kind of little variations that come into play when I show you what I make. Okay, but what I grew up knowing this dish as, and keeping in mind my part of Malaysia, like Malaysia, I always tell people is a multicultural country. It sounds cliche, but fundamentally Malaysia, the culture as it is, the food and the influence and all that, were basically kind of like a fusion of flavors from the three main ethnic groups. All right, these are not the only ethnic groups in Malaysia, and of course there are always going to be other variations, but primarily the Malays, the Chinese and the South Indians are the three main ethnic groups in Malaysia. I'm Chinese. So you know, depending on like which part of Malaysia, the dishes will kind of reflect this kind of fusion. Okay, and within the spectrum of Chinese immigrants, you know, so usually most of the Chinese will have been there a couple of generations. Within that spectrum, there'll be different Chinese dialect groups. All right, where I came from down south, the predominant, like what we call lingua franca, kind of like what we spoke in the markets and all that among the Chinese, generally would be Cantonese. Okay, so in Cantonese, this dish is called Woon, literally means little bowl cakes. Okay, and in Singapore, when I went to visit Singapore, like as a grown-up, we went to Singapore a couple of times in my lifetime. I left Malaysia when I was a teenager. But when I went back to Singapore as a grown-up, I realized they had this other thing called chui kueh, right? Singapore, the Chinese ethnic group that dominates there are the Hokkiens, right? So I'm actually Hakka, so I'm neither Cantonese or Hokkien or whatever, but I'm Hakka, but you know, just fun fact. But it's very similar, except the Singapore version is smaller. Okay, so Singapore chui kueh, and I'm told in southern parts of Malaysia they have chui kueh as well. But as someone who grew up in my particular part of Malaysia, we called it Woon Zai Go, and they're larger. Okay, so they are basically you know, the rice flour batter that I made to make rice rolls with, basically smearing like the surface of like a pan or something like that, and steam into a very thin layer that I roll up. Those are the rice noodles using essentially the same batter. If I then steam it in bowls, I will get like a cake. Okay, so the Singaporeans, because theirs are smaller, they look like they have special molds for them, which I can't get over here, but they are not too dissimilar to something like this. Okay, I mean size-wise anyway. Whereas in my part of Malaysia, in Seremban, we would more likely see them steamed in bowls, like, okay, about this size. So you can see the difference. Okay, and here in Cabramatta, and by the way, we don't use like kind of clay bowls. All right, they usually have like these special molds, also made from like what do you call them, enamel. Okay, so the Singaporean ones will be about this size or even a bit smaller. This was the closest I could find, closest match I could find to it. This is actually from Indian grocery supplies, right? Because the Indians like a lot of, hey Remy, the Indians like a lot of these kind of like silver plated kind of serving dishes. So you can imagine the size difference. Okay, so these are more like, they are practically they're probably somewhere in between like your typical Asian, like what do you call it, condiment saucer and this. So somewhere in between is about the size of the Singaporeans' chui kueh, whereas my Woon Zai Go come in these bowl size, and then what they would do is actually score them. Okay, so when you order it, they'll have like a big steamer, several layers, and it's more of a breakfast thing. Okay, So you say you want a Woon they'll take it out of the steamer in an enamel bowl, right? And then they'll use a knife to score it, okay, like a crisscross thing, okay? And then they'll tip it out onto a plate for you, and then they put the sauce and the toppings on, okay? So essentially what you end up with, if you can imagine something that's kind of like cubed up, right? Whereas in Singapore, when you have the chi kueh, they just kind of like, again, in a big steamer basket, they'll have all these little thingos, right? And then they just scrape it out, and then you get basically just like little saucer shaped thingos, and you'll have a few of them, okay? Whereas when you have Woon you'll have one, maybe two, but when you have these ones in Singapore, you'll have like half a dozen of them, okay? So those are the main differences. And I noticed when I came to Australia as well, Cabramatta, which is a hub of a lot of like Vietnamese and Indo-Chinese immigrants, right? That they have something very similar as well. I don't know what it's called in Vietnamese, but again, they're like the Singapore-sized dinky little rice cakes, right? And their topping, they use a similar topping, but they use this dried shrimp, okay, but it's a more orangey color. In Singapore and Malaysia, we actually, our topping is quite dark in color. And I've seen a number of different variations to this, but, and in all honesty, because when I started out doing this whole Malaysian food thing, because that's, you know, I'm not a professionally trained chef, I basically had to teach myself how to cook everything based on my recollection of how they tasted in Malaysia, right? And this is before, I'm so old, this is before the time the internet really was a thing, okay? So when I taught myself how to make it, I thought the flavor was pretty spot on, but in hindsight, it was actually a little bit off, okay? But one thing I did do, which I think the purists are gonna cry bloody murder about it, is that I use gula melaka, which is that Malaysian brown sugar, as one of the sauces that go on it, okay? And you'll see, I mean, if you put up with me, you'll see why it actually makes sense to use it, okay? So as far as the ingredients I need to make the rice cake, so there are going to be a couple of steps involved. These are the flours. Again, this is rice flour, okay? And this is tapioca flour, right? So you can't tell them apart except for the labels, right? For this particular brand, I always know the red label denotes rice flour and blue label denotes tapioca flour. But once you open it up, you can't tell the difference really. So if you're going to tip them into a jar, make sure you label the jar, because I've been caught out before as well. I'll be like, oh, okay, I've got some of this left over. I'm just going to tip it into the jar, and then 3 months later, I'm thinking, what is this? I don't remember if it's tapioca flour or rice flour or glutinous rice flour, okay? But they're very, very finely milled, and they look a very, very strong white color, okay? In fact, more white with the tapioca flour than the rice flour, in all honesty. Okay, so I want to measure this out. Let me just find my scales. And you know what, I'm going to start heating up the water here. Okay, so I want predominantly rice flour, okay, so I want about 300 grams of rice flour here, and what I want to do is actually semi-cook the mixture, okay. And I'm gonna have a go at cooking it in this thing over here, all right. This actually belongs to my sister. Where I live, like all the kitchen appliances you see belong to me. But this place is actually owned by my sister, who no longer lives in Australia, all right? But she had a garage full of like her own kitchen supplies, and she had a couple of these really nice bowls, and I always imagined them as just serving dishes. And then I found out online you can actually cook with them, so I'm gonna try and see how it turns out, cooking the batter in it, okay? So you remember with the rice flour rolls, I basically mixed up the batter and then just smeared it and steamed it in thin layers. For this particular one, because I'm steaming them in bowls, I'm going to actually partially cook the batter just to make sure it doesn't settle while it's steaming, because these are going to be quite, you know, quite thick layers, okay? Because this batter otherwise will tend to sink to the bottom. If you're doing the smaller ones, if you're doing the Singaporean version, right, you don't actually have to do this, because smaller cakes mean that there's less risk of them settling, because you want to steam them very, very quickly and take them out, all right? So it's just little things you want to take into consideration depending on which way you lean with this particular dish, okay? So let's measure this 300 grams. And I actually, you know, I had a look on my website. I have posted this recipe before, but it appeared originally in this iPad app that I developed a few years ago. And if you own an iPad, you might still find it in the iTunes store. It's called Truly Malaysian Magazine. Hey Amber, how you doing? But yeah, I think it was selling for $1.99. It was just a token, just to kind of help cover the cost of developing the app, because the app cost me like thousands of dollars to develop. If you're a business person wanting to do an app, like, you know, send it to India or something like that, you know, it's almost a vanity exercise. You're never gonna like recoup the cost unless, you know, you've got a big brand behind you and you want to do it as a branding exercise. But as far as actual return on investment, is a lost cause. But anyway, this recipe first appeared in that app, right? And I want a couple of, so basically this is 300 grams of rice flour. And I'm putting 2 tablespoons of tapioca flour in here. And I would imagine you could do the same. You could use corn flour instead of tapioca flour when it comes to it. But generally, you know, according to my mom, it's one of those things that you never, you know, sometimes you take people's words for it, but according to my mom, tapioca flour has more starchiness than corn flour, all right? So keep all these in your head when you're doing something like this, and just adapt and adjust as needs be. So just rice flour and tapioca flour. Yeah, the recipe that appeared in my Truly Malaysian mag, again, was edited by my American editor, and you know, I hate to say dumbed down, right? But it was kind of simplified for an audience that might be put off having to find all these exotic ingredients. So the one that I had in my app was essentially a vegan version. And it didn't have this, essentially. This is the dried shrimp that I've used in a number of my recipes, okay? This is the cheapest dried shrimp I can find because I'm cheap. Dried shrimp can actually be quite expensive, right? In this day and age. Generally, they scale by size, okay? So the larger, plumper ones will be quite expensive. This is the, like I said, the cheapest version. This is located in the freezer or refrigerated section of Asian grocery stores here in Australia. And this, because I buy everything in commercial sizes, this is in like in a 1 kilo bag, and the 1 kilo bag might cost about $15 or something like that. Whereas if you were buying the premium ones, you know, to me it's a little bit redundant if you buy the premium ones and you end up mincing it anyway, which is what we're going to do, okay? But my the recipe in my app does not actually contain this, because the assumption is most people are not going to be able to find this, so, you know, might as well keep it simple. Having said that, there's another ingredient a little bit exotic as well in there, okay, which is this one here. And it says preserved radish in the pack, okay? And this is actually pre-minced already. If you talk to a Chinese person and ask for preserved radish, they'll most likely, if you're in a grocery store that's run by a Chinese person, they most likely will point you to the Chinese preserved radish that tend to be cut into larger chunks, okay? So you might find something similar in hue to this, but they'll be in like finger-sized chunks, okay? That's the very popular preserved radish that a Chinese person, regardless of where they come from, uses in their cooking, okay? But this particular preserved radish is pre-minced, and this is from Thailand. And this is important because the Thais use this in pad Thai, okay? So if you go to an Asian grocery store, try and find this if you can, because usually the Chinese version, apart from the fact that they're cut in like larger chunks and you have to mince them, you can throw it in the food processor or whatever. They're also a lot saltier than this one here, I find. Okay, this one actually, the Thais being Thai, this one actually is a bit sweet as well. Glad I could catch another stream. Yeah, good to have you. Okay, so this preserved radish, and in all honesty, this particular brand of preserved radish comes with two different colored labels, okay? I always ask for the blue label, right, as opposed to the yellow label one. They're both actually called preserved radish, but I found when I was using this for my business, I used to go through a lot of this, I found that the ones with the yellow label were a lot saltier than the ones in the blue label. I don't know if that's a point of difference, but reading the English word, it just says preserved radish. It doesn't tell you that this one is got more sugar content than the other. But I find the sugar actually helps with the overall flavor for what I use in my business anyway. And in theory, because it's preserved, you really should rinse it out, right? But a lot of the time when I was using it for my business, it was fine just using it as is. It's not so bitingly salty the way the Chinese preserved radish is, that you need to kind of like wash it down a few times before you use it, okay? So that's that. And again, with the dried shrimp, you want to soak it in hot water and then strain it out and then mince it up, okay? So I'm gonna go and put the kettle on. Just give me a second. Okay, so that's going. So like I said, this is my first time cooking anything in this, all right? It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. I hope I don't break it, but it's meant to actually be able to withstand like cooking on a stove. Okay. Because I do a lot of Asian cooking, but like this is like some French cookware, all right? Like I said, I always thought it was just a serving dish, and I don't really have any need to serve anything. Cookie, my mom taught me there are two different preserved radish, the sweet type and the salty type. Pretty hard to know which is which if you're like me and cannot read Chinese. I know, right? Exactly. Same here. But if ever you come across this particular, like I said, it says it's made in Thailand. I ask for the blue label. I actually tell the shop I always, when I order it, because I fax everything through, I know it's very old school, I fax everything through. I say minced preserved radish, bracket, sweet, comma, blue label. All right, that's it, because you know there's that language barrier as well, because if you're like me and Cookie, who are half-baked Chinese, where you grow up in a country like Malaysia where you speak Chinese to your neighbors and to your parents, but you never really paid attention in school, because you basically, in our generation, I don't know how much has changed since, in our generation we used to be required to do one token Chinese class per week, but it wasn't really graded per se. Essentially, it was kind of the government's you know, their throwaway for those of us who want to hold on to our culture, but primarily we studied everything in Malay as the medium of instruction. And at school, you know, you talk to your non-Chinese friends in either Malay or English, all right? In my generation, more so English than Malay. Nowadays, it's a little bit kind of like the other way around, I think. But yeah, our Chinese tends to be very colloquial. And also, we can't read the language to say. I mean, I'm trying to learn like Chinese words nowadays. But when Cookie and I, when we go to a Chinese shop, we'll be like, yeah, we'll read the English, but we'll have no idea what the Chinese actually says, you know. And sometimes I could actually take a photo, send it to my mom, and say, what does this actually say? We're really pathetic. We were forced by my mom to take Chinese classes on weekends, but I used to fail them. Oh, that's very sad. Okay, I think I want to start heating this up. That's the thing, you know, when you're a kid, you have no motivation to learn your own culture and your own language, and then as an adult, you regret it. Okay, so I've got the two different flours mixed in here. I want to actually mix this up, so let's throw it in my thermocook. All right, so that's the thermocook. I'm using it as basically as a blender in this instance, and I want to add about 1.2 liters of water to this. And I think I need a pinch of salt, but I'll just quickly check. Yeah, pinch of salt, okay. Yeah, the only time when I was at school in Malaysia, I used to do really well academically. In all my life of sitting for exams and tests, the one time I failed was in Chinese. And it was, like I said, they were so lackadaisical about it that my teacher said, we're not even going to put it in your report card, all right? So that's how much they really didn't care that you failed Chinese. Okay, so this is all mixed up, right? There might be actually too much of this to fit into this bowl here, but we'll see. All right, let's try this. Like I said, this is like French cookware and whatever else it is. I don't even know what it's called. The reason why I decided to give this a second look, it's been sitting on my shelves for forever, okay, since I moved in here like a year and a half ago. I thought, oh, they look pretty, I'll take it out of the garage and leave it. I haven't touched it. And then if you guys are familiar with Crofton, C-R-O-F-T-O-N, this very well regarded chef online actually posted on Facebook saying, hey, there's some Crofton cookware on sale at Aldi, you guys should check it out. And I wasn't remotely interested because I was thinking, what use do I have for it? And then I realized when I Googled Crofton that usually their stuff, this kind of stuff, they look exactly like this. This is a different brand to Crofton. They usually cost like over $100 each, so I was thinking, oh wow, maybe I am missing out and I should go and get it, speaking as someone who's already got like an oversupply of kitchen gadgets. So I went to Aldi to check out this Crofton stuff, but the sale was over, so that ran out. But then I thought, hang on, they look very similar to what I already have on my shelves, so let's Google and see what they do, and apparently you can cook in them. Okay. So I'm just gonna, basically what I want to do is just thicken this up, right? And the other thing I want to mention is with this particular batter, I used to use it to make what we call, see, a lot of these recipes can be cross-pollinated with other dishes, okay? And I used to do this in large commercial amounts for something I used to sell at my restaurant, at my market stores, which was very popular. It was called chai tau kueh, all right? Which in Penang is called cha kueh kap. I know it's very, very confusing, but essentially I've seen it called cubic noodles online, all right? It's very confusing because different people call it different names, but essentially what it was same deal. I would mix this up and then cook this until it's more or less like a sticky mixture, and then I would steam them in rectangular aluminum trays, all right? And after they cool down, I took them out, cut them into cubes, about 1-inch cubes, right? And then I would use it for a stir-fry dish, okay? So that's another way you can use this kind of like a mixture. But yeah, like I said, it's been called cubic noodles, I guess, to say that it's kind of like noodles, but no, but they're cubes, okay? But I called it chai tau kueh when I was selling it. And in all honesty, growing up in Seremban, we didn't have chai tau kueh, alright? I don't know what other parts of Malaysia are like. I'm too scared to use glass breakable cookware over direct heat in case they explode. Pyrex exploding, is that right? Really? I thought Pyrex is meant to be usable in ovens. Yeah, well, I've got more rice flour if this breaks, but it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. But yeah, I mean, I got really intrigued by Crofton because I realized, because I saw them at Aldi and I thought, nah, no point buying this because they're freaking heavy as well, right? And I've got Noah and I've got my shopping and I don't want to be lugging like all this heavy stuff. And they were selling them for about $25. And of course, when I finally decided to Google them, I realized that when they're not on sale in Aldi, if you buy them like anywhere else online, they cost like I said, $200, $250 and some crazy amounts like that. But then I thought, oh, I better go and grab some, because, I don't want to miss out. And they were all gone. In fact, there was one that was actually, I'll show you what I bought. So when I went to my Aldi yesterday, like I said, the sale was over, but they had this leftover. They had this one here, okay? This is like non-glossy, and it comes with this lid here. And somebody has to tell me, somebody has to remind me what this is called. It's meant to be for a Moroccan dish. Cookie might tell me, Cookie might know what this is for. Tagine, all right? Assuming it's pronounced correctly. Tagine, Moroccan tagine. But this is a crafted Moroccan tagine. And because, like I said, this was the last thing they had over there. This was only like $12.99 or $11.99. Isn't that crazy? All right, but apparently you can cook in this. And it's meant to, yeah, it's meant to be some special Moroccan national dish, okay? Yeah, so anyway, I want to cook this and thicken it up, but don't get stressed out if you start getting lumps in here, all right? Certainly when I was doing it for my, that other dish that I mentioned before, it used to come out lumpy and people would freak out, oh no, it's not evenly smooth. That's fine, okay? Because once you steam it, it will even out. But having said that, yeah, just kind of like stir it around. But yeah, so I bought this as a Crofton thinger. Then I thought, I'll see if this is the same, and I googled it. It's exactly the same as the Crofton stuff. Yeah, the other thing that Crofton is famous for are like cast iron cookware. And I don't know, like, I don't know, Cookie, if you Tajin, see, you knew it too. I didn't know it. I had to Google it when I came home. Actually, I Googled it at Aldi, kind of like Tajin, what is it, you know? And it mentions that that funnel-shaped lid, apparently, essentially what it does is that it helps like the condensation to kind of like drip back down into the dish that you're cooking. So it's quite interesting. And apparently because Morocco is like a very arid like place, that actually helps in their cooking because they don't have to keep adding water to it. So I'm trying to figure out what I can use it for. I probably won't have much use for the lid because it's so high. I don't know. Maybe a curry or something like that. We'll see. A rendang or something like that. Usually a rendang you have to keep adding water to it to make sure it doesn't dry out too much. So I want to actually, like I said, cook this so that it's semi-solid. Just to, you know, the whole point of it is so it doesn't settle when you're steaming it. All right, it's heating up. Okay. And I want to make a chili sauce to go with this, and I'm trying to remember what they used to serve in Malaysia with the chili. You know, this was something I really liked eating as a kid, but I think when I was a teenager, we kind of grew out of it, or other stuff that kind of like, you know, took over. And it's quite funny when I posted today on social media that this is what I'm going to be making. Everyone's going, oh, you can never find this in Sydney and all that sort of stuff. I used to sell it in Sydney. But secondly, my recipe has been sitting on my blog for years, you know. All these people say, oh, I don't know how to make it. I've been sort of like, you know, but still. If anything, if there's one takeaway from this whole online life, you know, for me, it's the fact that people don't pay attention and they're too lazy to kind of like click. Saw the recent cast iron cookware range in Aldi that was on sale. That's the one. Such beautiful colors. Had a hard time resisting buying a couple of them. I have enough piles and pans. I know, I was exactly the same. I was thinking they're quite pretty. I mean, like I said, it didn't help as well because cast iron is heavy, you know. But apparently they're like 1/10 the price of what they usually would be. So next time, go and get it anyway. I'm telling myself I'm gonna get it. Apparently they have this sale once a year only at Aldi. Okay, so this is thickening up. I'm just gonna turn it off because it will continue to thicken up some more. And you see that, I don't know if you can just make out that it's a little bit lumpy. Okay, like I said, that's totally fine, okay, because it will kind of like smooth out when it's steaming. Okay, just let me scrape this. I don't want to dirty this. Scrape this down a bit. And there's no hard and fast rule as to when you turn it off. All you want to do is just kind of like make it so that it doesn't settle. Okay, you want to basically create some level of like cohesion to the batter, because rice flour in water does tend to settle. Tapioca flour even more so. You see it's thickening up even more so now. Okay, so just give it a nice mix through. So don't forget, this is essentially the same batter mixture that you would use for making noodles, okay? So the only point of difference is how it's kind of like handled afterwards. If you steam it in thin sheets, you get noodles. If you steam it in like a bowl, you get what we call in Chinese, like I said, little bowl cakes, okay? So you see it here, it's thickened up. I'm going to actually get some of the molds for it. And I'm conflicted whether I should use the large one, which is, like I said, how I grew up eating it, or do some dinky little ones. The problem with these ones here, okay, you follow me, you'll see that like, yeah, they were way too heavy for me to handle. Exactly, right? That's kind of like one of the drawbacks about buying those things. I live on the top floor of this apartment block that doesn't have elevators, all right? And if you imagine trying to carry Noah tends to get distracted when he's coming home. So if I don't hold his hand, he'll wander off somewhere, sort of thing. So it's hard to carry all your shopping. Sometimes Noah doesn't want to walk and you've got to carry him, and then you've got like these freaking heavy cast iron stuff, but they were very, very pretty and very cheap. Yeah, so if you follow my cooking adventures, you'll know that not everything works, all right? But you can actually learn from my mistakes or whatever. But I have a feeling, when I bought this, I didn't pay close attention to it, but I bought a number of these from this Asian grocery store, right? And I didn't realize at the time when I saw this and I thought, okay, this will work great. I'm gonna grab 10 of them. And when I came home, I realized they're actually different. Okay, so they were all stacked up together, right? And you think they're the same, but the one difference between the two of them is that one of them has kind of like a ridge around the side here. Okay, so when I steam it, it will create, like, aesthetically, if nothing else, aesthetically you're gonna see like a little ridge at the bottom of you know, when you turn out the rice cake, all right? Whereas the other one doesn't have quite that ridge here, that prominent ridge. The other thing as well is you may, especially if you don't oil this well enough, that because of the ridge, it may kind of like catch some of the batter and cause a problem that way. But yeah, what I used to do is just steam them in these bowls, but traditionally in Malaysia, they will steam them in enamel ones, okay? And like I said, I have to actually try steaming them in these dinky little like saucer plates as well, okay? In Singapore, like I said, you know, they're virtually that size, but a bit larger. So let's see. Let's do a couple of different ones. So I've got my steamer going up the back here, and this is the steamer layer, okay? And I'm not gonna move the whole pot across because it's a bit bulky, and I want to start cooking the other stuff that go into this as well. So you want to brush, and just brush some oil in your molds, whatever you end up using. And just keep in mind that depending on what you use, the molds can be quite thick, okay? Like this one here, this bowl here, would be thicker than like an enamel bowl they would use in Malaysia. So you might need to steam it a little bit longer. And also depending on how thick this mixture ends up being, okay, this is actually a little bit thicker than it needed to be. Depending on how thick the mixture is, you know, it'll kind of like play a part in how long you need to steam it for. Okay. And in Malaysia, they used to actually just fill it up right up to the top, okay. And just kind of like, you can flatten it up a bit. Okay, so I don't know, Cookie, how you have it. What is that? how you had this in Ipoh. Ipoh is somewhere like halfway between the north and the south as well, but inland, right? So, okay, I forgot to oil this all together, but doesn't matter. Let's see how we go with it. You know what? No, I don't want to ruin it. So let's scrape it out and stick some oil in it. It will expand a bit when you from the heat, okay? So that's that. And then let's just do a few small ones. And usually if you look up recipes for doing the Singaporean chwee kueh, which like I said are in little saucers like that size, a bit larger, they only require steaming for like 5-10 minutes. The bigger ones, I would steam it for about 20 minutes, right? And when I used to do it for the chai tao kueh, we used to steam it longer because they were in like larger pans, right? But you will find that it's going to be very soft when it first comes out of the steamer. So you do need to let it rest a bit. If you're using, certainly if you're using it for chai tao kueh anyway, which is that, you know, how we need to cut it into cubes, into solid cubes that we then actually cook in a stir fry. If you want the cubes to be nicely like even, you do need to let it rest till it cools down, alright? Because otherwise it'll be all sticky when you try and cut it to size. Let's move this. That worked out quite well, that steamer thing. Alright, let's steam this. And now we want to make, I'm just going to soak this quickly in the hot water, okay? So when I used to sell this at my restaurant, I used to have the garlic that I used to mince up and then fry up with a lot of oil. And what I want is essentially like a garlic infused oil that's used to drizzle over the whole dish, right? And then I'll leave the garlic bits in it as well. Okay, so we're just gonna whip this up. Let me just go and rinse this out so I can use it. Remy bot hates me. What did you do? Oh, right. Silicone pinch bowls. Oh, I'll have to check it out. Oh, that'd be perfect, right? See, silicone is like after my time, you know. Oh, how cute are they? Plus $6.80 plus $6.70 in shipping cost. That's pretty cute. I might actually get that. I should add that to my wish list. They won't stick. Is that right? Have you got them or? I'm sure we can get cheaper in eBay. Or AliExpress. You know, I've never. Oh yeah, I did buy some clothes on AliExpress before. I should actually check it out a little bit more. The funny thing was yesterday on Facebook, this ad popped up, right? So I'm just gonna actually just dry this up first. This ad popped up for these, you know, those, multi kind of stackable like lunch thingos, right? Back in our day in Malaysia, they're a little bit older. Just an out of the blue brainwave. Yeah, these stackable lunch containers, they're quite attractive. Like back in our day, like they'd be like, you know, more old school, but this was like, you know, very colorful options, and it says it's only like some super cheap price. So I thought, oh, why not? Let's go and buy it. It says it's supposed to be like, you know, huge savings and all that. So I went to their website, I actually signed up and tried to buy that thing. All went through okay. I didn't end up buying. Basically, it said like it was only $5, but when you go and actually check out the item, it's $5 per layer, right? So I wanted like a 4-layer, obviously being greedy, I wanted as stacked as high as possible. That ended up being like $18. And then it said like delivery was $8, so it'd be $26. I said, okay, look, why don't I just Google this, you know, and see if I can buy it cheaper. Sure enough, you know, instead of $26, I ended up paying like about $17 on eBay for it, including delivery. So it goes to show you should check out eBay. It's tough. This looks like it'll be pretty easy and something I could do at home. I think so, you know. But anyway, so here's the garlic. Now, the stuff that go onto this are, I won't say arbitrary, but they vary, okay? So they can be fairly simple, or they can be a little bit more exotic. It's interesting because when I look up this in cookbooks, a lot of the recipes, as far as the toppings are concerned, a lot of the recipes call for like mincemeat topping, right? So essentially, if you saw my my mincemeat noodle broadcast, it will be very similar to that. But as a kid growing up in Seremban, I never had mincemeat as a topping for this dish. Okay, it used to be more of a just a sauce and radish, right? And I'm gonna use the dried shrimp because I like dried shrimp. And also because the Singaporean version of chi kueh actually uses a combination of dried shrimp, radish, and garlic. So all of them fried up together, but we're gonna do it a little bit different. Okay, so that's the garlic. Let me check on like the smaller bowls. I think they might be ready. Let me just turn this off. Okay, so the dinky little ones, just let them cool down a little bit. Like I say, if you were doing dinky little ones like these, you don't actually need to cook this up into a porridge, all right? You can actually pour it directly into that. That's how they do it in Singapore. And to make it easier to pour, what you can do actually is like in your steamer basket, like have all these little bowls lined up in your steamer basket, and have the batter in like a squeeze bottle, and just squeeze the batter into it, right? Just around the thing, and then cover it and steam it for 10 minutes. So there you go. And because I did cook it into a porridge, you see the top is a little bit uneven, whereas if you had actually just poured it in directly, it will be more even. But of course, like I said, you know, if it's too big an amount, that you might end up seeing like a separation of layers when you're steaming it. All right. Okay, so let's scoop out the garlic and we're going to fry this up to a crisp, and then you can actually store this in a jar, right? It will keep very well. And then you can use it for anything, not just for this particular recipe, which is part of the reason why I'm doing these separately, all right? But yeah, technically, like the Singaporeans would actually fry up the garlic and then throw in the radish and throw in the minced dried shrimp as well, all right? So you can do it whichever way you feel like. Pour the oil in you want a fair bit of oil because you're actually trying to do like a garlicky oil, okay? So there you go. I can probably go and fetch some more oil too while I'm at it. So hit me up if you've got any questions in the meantime. Cookie tiffin carriers, yeah, tiffin carriers, except like a modern Japanese tiffin carrier, so they're cute and colorful, but they don't have that very ornate, like, you know what I mean, old school look about them. This, I can't wait to try this at home. You should. This should be pretty fail-safe actually. A lot of, like I said, a lot of people are saying, oh, you know, I haven't had this in like 20 years because I can't find it in Sydney. It's actually one of those things that are really easy to make. You know? So let's see how these turn out. It's still a little bit sticky. I'll let it set a little bit more. Okay, it needs cooking a little bit more. It's not quite done through yet. I'm going to put it back in. See, everything I do is agat. That's what I mean by agat, like you guesstimate, like you think, okay, that looks like it's done, okay, maybe it's not, sort of thing. Okay, so this is soaked and I'm going to strain it out and I'm going to throw it in here again and mince it up. I'm just going to take it out by hand, I think. Again, this isn't necessary. It's not in my recipe that was in the iPad app because, like I said, the assumption was that, you know, people might throw the whole recipe in the too hard basket if there's too many things in there that they can't find for it. By the way, guys, while I've got you, let me know what you think would make for good giveaways on Twitch, and I will kind of like initiate talks with different brands and see if they want to partner with me to offer giveaways here. So if you, you know, if you like games or like, you know, whatever, let me know. Or would you prefer gender specific stuff? I don't know. So a lot of stuff, like, I'm part of a lot of groups of like entrepreneurial women, but everything they make is very gender specific, in other words very female focused, and I don't know what my demographic on Twitch is like, whether, like, you know, I don't want to be offering giveaways of like, you know, makeup and scented candles and that sort of stuff if if a large chunk of my demographic don't care for that sort of stuff, you know. Maybe cookbooks. You think? You think? All right. Cool. Yeah. Let me put the word out. Any specific type of cookbooks or? Okay. So this is happily frying away. And let's see how the steamer is going. You should probably steam it like on like a medium heat, alright? I'm a little bit, I fast track everything, so I tend to crank everything up. That's kind of, you know, that's my lack of patience in play there. So I've got the dried shrimp in here, strained out. Okay, I'm just gonna mince this up. And in all honesty, I don't remember in my childhood, like our version of Woon whether they actually had the dried shrimp in it. I can't remember. I remember the radish because that to me was the highlight, which is this one here. Alright, I'll open it up so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so this is the minced preserved radish, and like I said, in theory you should rinse it, mostly to wash away some of the saltiness, but this one is, like I said, this is actually like noticeably sweet. All right. So let's fry this up. And like I said, you know, ever since I made this for my restaurant and all that, from kind of like my own experimentation, I've since found that the dark sauce that I remember going on, I've since found that most recipes call for the thick soy that you've seen me use a number of times, like a mixture of thick soy, a bit of sugar, and you can put oyster sauce in it as well, and some soy sauce. Okay, those seem to be about the same combination. You know, that same few like combination of Chinese sauces, but I found that a lot of the saltiness already comes from the radish and from the dried shrimp. So to me, I don't need more soy sauce added to it. All right, and I don't need yeah, oyster sauce or anything like that. I want the sweet to counter all that saltiness from these other ingredients. So to me, using gula melaka actually works. All right, aesthetically it's brown and all that. So I do know that it's not meant to be gula melaka that you sprinkle on it, but everyone who's thought it sounded really weird, who has since tried it, says, you know, it's strange, but it actually works really well with this. So, you know, use gula melaka or brown sugar or whatever, because in this case, the gula melaka, the Malaysian brown sugar that we use, we're actually just going to simmer it into a syrup. All right, so technically you could use like a dark brown sugar as well if you can't get hold of that. Okay, so this is brown enough. I'm gonna turn it off, and I've got the Pyrex here. Hopefully it doesn't it doesn't explode. Cookie's got me worried now. Okay, the ones I ate, if they had dried shrimp in them, it would have been very minimal, predominantly radish and a bit only to go with the cake. Huh? Yeah, yeah. The dried shrimp thing is yeah, it's like the Singapore cheap kueh. You know, because yeah, but I don't remember if it had it in our version in Malaysia. Okay, so that's the garlic oil over there. So next thing, let's fry up the radish. Okay, let's turn it up. Bit of oil, and throw this in. You will find that this will turn a little bit like white if you fry it long enough, and that's fine. So you can see it. Okay, and like I say, you can throw in the dried shrimp in there now. All right, that's how the Singaporeans do it, but we're gonna keep it separate in case, you know, if I were doing it for a business, if you had everything except the dried shrimp, this could be a vegan dish. All right, so the dried shrimp is the only non-vegan ingredient in all this. Cyan, some of the instant curry paste, or that could be raffled away. All right. Okay, cool. It's quite funny you should mention the curry paste. Like I said, I have a whole bunch in my pantry. You saw the other day, like these fairly exotic ones, but I bet a lot of them are past their best before dates, which don't worry me, because I think these best before dates are very arbitrary. But you know, it probably would worry someone who's just starting out on Asian food. But let me quickly go and grab a couple of packs and see. Okay, let me go. Okay, so these are the pastes that we were talking about. I mean, I've got other ones as well. And when I closed my restaurant and when I closed my warehouse about 1.5 years ago, I moved all this stuff into my garage downstairs. So I've got a lot of residual stock. But yeah, a lot of them are like past the best before date. So Edge of Night, how about that? Kitchen knives for a raffle. Could use some of that. Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, let me talk to some suppliers. Kitchen knives. Okay, that's a good one. Why didn't I think of it? You know, actually, it's quite funny. Someone mentioned fairly recently, just in the last week or so, that there's a knife show coming up in Sydney, and they were offering discounted tickets to it. I was thinking, I don't have to buy tickets. Come on. But yeah, definitely. Okay. Any other ideas? Let me know. I was thinking really basic stuff. You know, I was thinking stuff like, you know, that I could talk to, like maybe I don't know, like battery charger packs or something for your mobile phones. Just stuff that, like, you know, I guess teenagers could use, could get a little bit excited about or something like that. I have seen some instant mee goreng noodles too in the market, but haven't tried them. Okay. Yeah, kitchen knives is a good idea actually. Okay, anyone else has any ideas? If you're watching this now, or you're thinking about it, or you're watching a replay of this, hop over to my Discord server and post your suggestion there. Just tag me in it, just Jackie M, alright? But my Discord server, the URL is just bit.ly, bit.ly/Discord Jackie, all lowercase, alright? So, yeah, let me know your thoughts. Okay, so this is fried up. Okay, you see like little white specks in there, which is fine. And let's dish this up. Every time I pour this into a glass bowl, now I'm like, oh, is this gonna crack? Thanks, Cookie. You got me all paranoid. Okay. Okay, so that's the radish. Okay. I haven't put any seasoning in it. It doesn't need it. It's quite flavoursome in and of itself. All right. So let's throw in the dried shrimp, minced dried shrimp. And like I said, there are other recipes I've seen that actually use mincemeat for this. Okay, so if you like mincemeat, to me mincemeat is like, it just completely changes the whole point of this dish. This dish is meant to be quite like breakfasty and quite like basic. All right. Okay, in this goes. So do you think we should do it as a raffle as opposed to as a giveaway? Is that the same thing, or a raffle implies you actually have to you actually have to donate money. Cookie, I like the idea of knives. My most used knife must be 30 years. Oh right, really? Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of knives. That's a great idea, you know. I showed you before the knife that I got for my TV appearance. It's a Victorinox, like they're like Chinese cleavers, right? But I need a knife sharpener as well, that's the thing. Like I've had it for like about 1.5 years and I've never sharpened it, and it really badly needs to be sharpened. But yeah, when I first got it, it was like, oh, like cutting through butter. It was so nice. I just want a little bit more oil in this. Okay. Let's see how these are now. I think I've done better work with these in the past, all right? So, but these are the rice cakes. Just take them out. actually got invited to do some cooking demonstrations in September, but unfortunately it clashes with another event that I'm doing that I've already committed to. I hate when things clash, you know. It's not like I'm packed out or anything like that, but invariably when I get asked once in a blue moon, hey, can you do this and tell us how much you charge for it? You'll be on the stage, we'll provide this, you know. Damn it, I can't do it because, yeah, I'm doing something else. Alright, let's see how this is looking. Okay, so you just see me just kind of like scoop it out, right? Tip it into something. Okay, so the hawker will basically grab these from the steamer basket, kind of like scrape them out and flip them upside down, all right, like this in the bowl. This is not very pretty, guys, but you get the idea anyway. Okay, so like I said, in Singapore, when you're eating this, you get like half a dozen in your serve, all right? Because they're so small. So basically when you fry up the dried shrimp, you just want to fry it till it's dry. And it's just salty. You can add a little bit of sugar in there if you want. But then again, you can use the way I used to serve this in my restaurant was like I have this, some chili sauce, pour the oil over it, and then I would, like I said, put the brown sugar syrup over it, and also a dash of soy sauce, okay? But you can put the soy sauce in here now and not worry about it. But entirely up to you. Essentially, the flavor I'm trying to achieve is it's a savory breakfast thing with a bit of sweetness. It's almost like having maple syrup with your bacon, I guess, sort of thing, you know, if you can imagine that contrast of flavors a little bit. So you can put more oil in this. I'm going to keep this fairly dry because I've got the oil in the garlic that I'm going to use anyway. So let's tip this out. Okay, so that's that there. I mean, I could organize to give away kitchen appliances. The difficulty with kitchen appliances is like the voltage and you know, the plug adapters and all that sort of stuff, because my audience is international, and also the shipping as well can be a little bit tricky. So what do I need? Okay, I want to make some of that palm sugar syrup, all right? So let's do that next. Hang on. I've got so much stuff in my miliardo. How you doing? Hey Tev. Miliardo money for every broadcast for us mobile data. I know, I do, yeah, crazy amount. And for whatever reason, it seems my mobile data consumption has just kind of shot up again. Okay, let's heat up this stinky little pan. Oh, so it's a little bit dusty. Okay, it's like, how do I go through like 5 to 10 gigs of data for each live stream? I don't even stream for that long, and like some of the other gamers stream like for hours and hours. Okay, so Malaysian brown sugar. I've talked about this in my my very recent broadcast. Miliardo cheer. Thank you. Oh, thanks. That's so cool. Twitch uses a lot of data. It's crazy, right? Like I said, I paid 150 bucks for 80 gigs of data per month. This is on top of other data that I already have, right? And I thought that'd be plenty for Twitch, and I've already gone through like crazy amounts of it just in a matter of like a few days. So I want to heat this up, and I want to add a little bit of water to this to dissolve it. Okay, so this is Malaysian brown sugar, like I mentioned. You can use regular like dark brown sugar if you want. Like I said, you know, the purists among us are going to say this wasn't in like the original how we grew up eating it in Malaysia. This was completely something that I kind of like came up with, right? Because like I said, back in my day, there weren't like online recipes. There weren't a lot of the, you know, in all honesty, with Malaysian cooking, especially street food, like Malaysian street food, probably applies to street food elsewhere as well. There's a whole culture of secrecy around like recipes, because these street food vendors, like, they get famous on the back of like whatever dish it is that they specialize in. There's nowhere in hell they're going to tell you how they make it, right? So back in my day, in the dark ages, nobody will be sharing around recipes on food blogs and all that, all right? So I kind of had to figure it out myself. Why do you use mobile data? Does Twitch not work using home Wi-Fi? Not my home Wi-Fi, no it doesn't. Basically, you need like minimum bandwidth requirements for live streaming, for live video streaming, and Australia essentially does not quite have the, well, where I'm at, I only have ADSL2. And I'm just adding a bit more sugar. This was already shaved from the other day when I made on day. Yeah, where I'm at, they only have ADSL2, which has, on a good day, download speeds of about 10 megabits per second and upload speeds of 0 point something per second, all right? If you're doing live video streaming, the upload speeds really what you've got to keep an eye on, and you want an absolute minimum of like 2 megabits per second upload speed. And I can't achieve it on anything except mobile data, all right? I mean, back in the day, depending on, you know, I've moved a number of times over the last couple of years. Even when I had cable internet, Gilly pronounced Gilly is now following Gilly. Sorry. Thanks for following. Yeah, back in my day when I was living in Darlinghurst, I had cable internet, and cable internet without the super boost, the download speed was like about 70 megabits compared to 10 that I'm getting now. But the upload speed was still only about 1, all right? Or yeah, around about 1 megabit. Because Australia, with Telstra, they throttle the upload speed. So for me to even reach 2 megabits upload speed, I actually had to pay an extra 20 bucks a month, right? And then it took it up to just on 2 megabits per second, all right? But nowadays, if you do a speed test with your mobile data, you'll find that you should get a decent, like say 30 megs down, 30 megs up, all right? And that's what I've had to use essentially. But they talk about the NBN rollout and all that. It's not available. It's not only not available in my area at the moment. It's also it's not even on the map as being available anytime soon. So no foreseeable like rollout date for my area. So pretty sad. 30. Oh, you crazy? Whereabouts are you, Miliardo? Your stream makes me so hungry. Camberwell, Victoria. Las Vegas. Ah, oh, that's not fair. Yeah, it seems like the whole world, like Australia is ranked like somewhere down. Australia has poorer internet than I think like Nigeria or something like that. You know, it's that bad. It's crazy. So you got to do this. You got to kind of like just put out and just have to rejig your finances to be able to do it. Anyone wants to ask me questions about like my setup and all that, I'm more than happy to answer them. So you can talk about it now or take it offline. So this is dissolved, right? and it's just basically like melting sugar, so nothing too involved about it. And as far as how much water I put in, it's just, you saw I just didn't really measure anything. All right. But okay, so the next thing I want to make is some chili sauce for this, and this sugar will keep quite well out of the fridge, but if you want to keep it for longer than like a week or so, keep it in the fridge, okay? But you can use it on anything. You can drizzle it over pancakes and all that sort of stuff. So again, this was Malaysian palm sugar, and like I said, in Malaysia, if you were looking for this dish, it wouldn't be served with Malaysian palm sugar. It's just that that's how I like it, all right? More traditionally, it would be served with, let's have a look. It would be served with something that's made up with this cooking caramel, right? See, also black, same color, and that's how I kind of like, you know, you remember how it looks like, you think, oh, maybe it was palm sugar, or, well, you know, I don't know if I actually consciously thought it was palm sugar, but I just thought that palm sugar worked really well with it. But yeah, in reality, if you're looking for the recipe nowadays, more than likely it will call for this thick soya sauce, which is similar to kicap manis, sweet soya sauce. So if you can find kicap manis, that might actually work for this dish as well. Like I said, ultimately the flavor profile is savory, but with a hint of sweetness to it, which can be achieved using palm sugar, using something like this with some sugar added to the sauce, or using sweet soya sauce, all right? So don't stress out too much about it. And this is just regular soya sauce. This is light soya sauce that I would just kind of like put a dash of in the dish ultimately. Okay, so let's get on to making some chili paste for this, right? So I'm using fresh chilies. And I think from memory in Malaysia, we use something similar to like, I wouldn't say sriracha, but not too dissimilar to that. But like a very finely pureed chili sauce that's got a hint of sweetness to it, okay? Yeah. But we're gonna just like cut this into chunks, and I'm gonna process it again in my food processor, and again I'm just gonna have to rinse this out. The reason why I'm not using, because usually you see me alternate between this and my Thermomix, and remember, if you watch my last couple of broadcasts, my Thermomix lid actually broke thanks to Noah, so it's all packed up and ready to be sent off to be fixed. So let me rinse this, I'll be back. And people always ask me what's the difference between this, which is a thermo cook, and a Thermomix. You know, technically they do the same thing, right? They process food, they can steam food and all that sort of stuff. In all honesty, like I said, Thermomix has had 50 years of technology behind it, so it is a more refined like product, all right? So I'm just telling things as they are. But this thermo cook costs like 1/3 what the Thermomix is, so you just gotta make an educated decision whether you want to pay 3 times as much for something that's like the, you know, this like the Thermomix is like the Mercedes-Benz of like these kind of cooking stuff, right? This is like the, I don't want to say it, I'll get in trouble. But this is fine, you know, it does the job. It's just this is the first incarnation, and I've got the second incarnation. I don't know if you can see, just like the other day, yeah, it's just, you can't see it. I've got the second incarnation, or what they hope to be the second incarnation, for me to test out. So part of what I do nowadays, apart from like live streaming, is I do a little bit of like you know, live cooking demonstrations in front of audiences on the stage sometimes, not that often. But I also consult for like a kitchen appliance company as well. Okay, and to that end, I have been asked to manage their influencer program. Influencer means they partner with bloggers and that sort of stuff, right? And they ask them to test out appliances and give honest reviews, okay? We're not asking you guys to So that's the chili. We're not asking anyone to lie or anything like that, or we're not legally binding you to anything, but basically what they do is they want me to find bloggers who actually have websites, so we're not, you know, unless you've got like 50,000 Instagram followers, we generally want a website. So if you know any bloggers in Australia or New Zealand, that's a huge difference. I used to stream T5, I've upgraded to 30, big difference. Not good enough to stream. Yeah, what's your 30? Cookie, yeah, not quite good enough to stream, sadly. The download speed is fine, you know, it's always the upload speed that, I'm guessing you've got cable internet. If that's what you've got, pay for the super boost, okay? And that will get your upload speed to about 2 megabits, which is what you need. Okay, so that's the chili. The one notable point of difference between the Thermomix and the Thermocook is that for whatever it is you're processing in a Thermomix, right? You want to get it to the same texture in a Thermocook. You generally have to do it a bit longer. All right, it will do it. It just takes a little bit longer. I want to add a little bit of water to this, okay, if you can see it. So it's still a little bit chunky. Let's give it one more whiz before we try and cook it up with some seasoning. So it's like a pasty form. Let's get something to put it in. So this is at the moment just fresh chili paste, right? We're just going to add some seasoning to it. We can add a little bit of sugar to it. I'm going to add some salt as well. And I'm just going to fry it up a bit. If you wanted to keep, well, you can actually add a bit of vinegar to it as well. I just don't want it to change the flavor of this too much. But Razor, you're an Aussie snail internet. I know it's sad, isn't it? Most wireless in America is around 50 megabits. Oh wow. I don't game at all. I actually thought I have good internet speed. You do have very good speed, but unfortunately, like I said, the upload is what what's problematic with yours. But your speeds are very typical of cable internet speeds here in Australia. So I'm just cooking this to make sure that it's all mixed in well together, okay? If you want to stretch this, in Malaysia I've seen them actually add like is it cassava? Yeah, it might be cassava, but basically some root, you know, some tubers that's been steamed and mashed, and they mix it into like their chili paste. All right, so there are lots of ways to kind of make chili sauce, chili paste, and all that. Just gonna put a little bit of salt in here. And just some sugar in here. And of course you can put pureed onion. You can even put garlic, like minced garlic in here as well. Let me just check on my kit, hang on a sec. Oopsies. Oopsies. Hey, don't break anything, baby. No, we say hello. Come. Razor, what's the difference between a modem and a router? Most modems act as routers nowadays, so technically you shouldn't need a separate router. So yeah, for all intents and purposes, like the stuff that we get nowadays that come with our internet plans that they send out, like they perform all kinds of different functions. You can make it happen. Hey, stop. No. Yeah, routers are very kind of like server room stuff, you know, and I used to work in an IT environment. You know, routers and gateways and switches and that sort of stuff. But yeah, if you look at like a lot of your modems nowadays, they'll just say modem / router. Amber, he's so adorable. Now we want to say hello, come. Here we go. Hey, say hello, say look up there. Now we gotta look up there. Hey, you wanna eat? Hey, you wanna eat? Here we go. You wanna watch TV? You go watch TV? Hey, what you doing? Hey, he's just he's sitting himself up on his stool, expecting a feed. I'm just keeping an eye on him because he's got a tendency to knock things off the table. Don't touch, baby. Don't touch. Don't touch. It's just taste testers. Don't touch. So this is fine as is. I'm not going to add any oil to it, right? But you can if you want. So for this small amount, blending it in here, you won't be able to get that same level of, you know, what's that word I want? you won't be able to get it as fine as if you had more of it, alright? Because if you notice, this bowl here, the base of it is quite wide. It's wider than your average blender, okay? So it's got a more powerful motor, but it's almost like a different, kind of like if you imagine a blender and a food processor, it almost like it splits the difference between the two of them, alright? So for you to be able to blend anything well, you probably need like at least about a third of the jug or something like that filled up. Whereas I only had a handful of chilies in here, but it's fine. Okay. Hey, gentle, don't touch, okay? Yeah, you guys sit, okay? Good. Are you a good boy? Are you a good boy? Okay, so these ones here, like I said before, when you order this at from your hawker, I'm trying to find the right knife. I don't have a lot of butter knives around for whatever reason. What they would do is that use a knife and go around it, and I'm already messing it up a little bit. Then I'll score it like this, okay? And it looks to me like it needs a bit more cooking. But, so basically they'll cut it up, they'll do it obviously like super fast. And then they'll scrape it out, upside down. Okay. Gentle, baby, gentle. Okay, this doesn't look beautiful, but you get the idea. And then what they do, let's turn this off. Is you can put like, this is the dried shrimp. This is the radish. The radish is really, to me, the highlight of this dish, in all honesty. So try and find yourself some minced preserved radish. Best bet, like I said, Southeast Asian grocery stores. If you end up buying the more commonly available Chinese preserved radish, like I said, they're about finger size. You will need to rinse them really well because they'll be very, very salty. And then you want to mince them in a food processor till they're this texture. And then when you fry it up, you want to add a bit of sugar to it, all right? Because they tend to be, I mean, certainly the ones I've come across anyway, they tend to be outright salty and like very, very much so as well. Whereas this Thai version here, certainly the one with the blue label I showed you earlier, where is it? Okay, this Thai version here is sweet, all right, with some saltiness in it. And then you want a bit of the dark sauce, okay? Again, in my instance, it's just palm sugar syrup. If you don't tell people, they don't get weirded out by it, okay? But people do expect this to be like the thick soy. Don't touch, baby, don't touch. Some garlic and oil over this. Okay. And then you stick some chili if you want chili. They'll usually ask you want chili, sort of thing. Some chili. And then you can put a dash of soy sauce over it as well. Okay. So that's the chickpea. I put a lot of topping. I mean, our cookie is going to tell you there's too much topping in here, all right? Like I said, this dish is really meant to be fairly plain. It's like having muffins for breakfast, like a Malaysian, like, you know, Malaysian thing. He goes around closing everything he does. He's got a fixation at making everything just right. So if I leave something open, okay. Look at him. It's like, what are you doing? No, never too much topping. I love abundance of topping. I know, me too. I'm very greedy like that. What brand should I be looking for when shopping for a steamer? Yeah, that's a good question. This one here is a Sunbeam. I don't know if you get Sunbeam in the USA. I have mentioned before, like, this works great because you can just plug it in on your tabletop, right? It takes up a lot, not that much space, and it comes with its own steamer basket on top, and it runs on electricity. But the downside to me is that it's not quite wide enough for some of the steaming I want to do, because we Asians, I'll show you here. So this is the how, I guess it's about 12 inches, or maybe, yeah. Right, we Asians, when we try and steam like a whole fish, we can't quite fit it in here. All right, when we want to steam like this stuff in like a, have a look. I don't think I even have it anymore. In these rectangular trays, because we Asians and the Filipinos, because Tevi might, Cyan would. Might be able to confirm this. I'm guessing the Filipinos have what we Malaysians and the Vietnamese have as well, what we call kueh, like all these steamed cakes, right? And the cake trays for steaming tend to be like too large to be able to fit into these baskets. So if I wanted to do it super cheap, I would buy those bamboo steamer baskets you can get at Asian grocery stores and stick them on top of like either a wok, right? Because if you steam it in a wok, and make sure it's not one of those iron woks you've seen me use, because those iron woks, if you put water in it and steam it, they will start to rust, okay? But there are other types of wok that are stainless steel that don't rust, right? And those are good for steaming. So these woks can be any size, and then you're not at the shop wondering like if the basket is going to fit on the wok, because it will, you know, because the wok is like kind of like a shape, so that it's you know, you can take any time, and then basically you fill up the wok with enough water to just barely graze the bottom of the steamer basket, and you're just gonna kind of like add water to it as you go along as well if it evaporates too much. But stainless steel wok for steaming is best. Yeah, so that's how we Asians would do it, and that will allow us to get like large steamer baskets. All right. Like I said, the downside of course is that it takes up more space in your kitchen as well. But yeah, I mean, you know, these things are nice and compact. They're like for the modern cook, you know, but they do have their limitations. I can't steam like a whole fish in there because I have to actually ask the shop to cut the fish in half for me to fit into those things. The thermal cook actually has a steamer basket that comes with it. Where is it? Oh. Here you go. So the thermal cook, if ever you decide to buy one, it comes with all these add-ons, right? And it also actually has another layer of the steamer as well. But the shape you see here is oval, okay? So it's good for steaming a whole fish, not so much if you're trying to steam, like I said, again, anything that's round or rectangle or square or something like that, because again, the perimeter isn't quite big enough. No, you want to eat? Good boy. Yeah. Oh, no problems at all. I use a wok to steam with stainless steel trivet or stand to put. Yeah, that's the other thing you can do as well. You can just put like, you can put these stainless steel trivets in there and stick a plate. Like that's how the Asians actually do it, right? You don't necessarily need a steamer basket to be able to steam in your wok. So first of all, you need a stainless steel wok. And you get those, you know, those trivets, you know, those little round thingos with legs, right? So you fill the wok with water, stick one of those trivets on, and then you can put your plate of whatever it is you want to steam in there, and that will just work just fine. So, see, Cookie is even more old school than me. Brad, hey, how you doing? Hey, Noe, you want to eat biscuit? Okay, good boy. Here you go. This is Noe's kind of like addiction nowadays. Arrowroot biscuits. The poor kid, he's got no teeth because they had to be all surgically extracted a year ago. So he's never had biscuits until recently because, like I said, he couldn't bite through them. But I found out that arrowroot biscuits, right, they dissolve if you keep them in your mouth long enough. So he's addicted to these now. And he doesn't realize there are much nicer biscuits out there, so he doesn't know what he's missing out on. He just knows arrowroot biscuits and that's all he wants to eat. And I have to break them up into small little chunks for him to be able to eat them. Here you go, sweetheart. You can sit over there and eat. Yeah, okay, cool. Any other questions? Let me see what time it is. This is a pretty short and sweet broadcast. Because I'm getting very paranoid about Noah knocking things over. You've seen what he's capable of. Yeah, so there you go. What we call Woon Go. And if the dinky little ones here, they're called Trikwe. No, we gentle. So let's do it Singapore style, right? Like I said, Singapore style. Singapore style does not actually have that brown sauce in it, all right? Singapore style, they would combine the radish with the dried shrimp. Oh, that was the dried shrimp, and this is the radish. They would combine the radish with the dried shrimp, and when they cook it up, they would actually add the seasoning in there. So in the mixture, when you saw me fry it up, they would have added like a, you know, a bit of like more saltiness to it, some of this thick soy and all that sort of stuff. So with the Singaporeans, when you go and buy this over there, I'm just going to stick some oil on it. And the mixture will be more oily as well. So it's just like the one thing that they give you, all right? And this is what it will look like. Okay, so none of this, a bit of this, a bit of that, and the dark sauce over it. No, they just have everything all mixed up in the one thing, and then they just ladle it over. So that's the Singapore chwee kueh, but fundamentally the flavor profile is fairly similar, right? And the Vietnamese, like I say, that I've seen do this, again, theirs are small, and they sell them in Cabramatta here in Sydney in takeaway containers. And they'll have like a takeaway container of like, say, half a dozen of these dinky little things. And they will have this minced dried shrimp on top, all right? So it's all done up for you. And sometimes they use like a mung bean kind of like topping as well. So there are lots of ways you can play around with it, but essentially all this is just kind of like the same batter that you use to make noodles from sort of thing. So if you can imagine, the flavor of this cake will be very, very neutral, but it's what you put on it, you know, that kind of like, sorry, that kind of makes this dish. Don't forget your Lola's recipe. Oh, steamer from here when you come next year. Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, who knew, like, yeah, who knew that Tev is actually going to check out Southeast Asia in the next year, so that's really, really cool. Yeah, guys, don't forget my Discord server. Like I said, bit.ly, bit.ly/Discord Jackie. It's quite funny, the group that I've got happening there. I noticed there's a common thread among the people who are very active on my Discord server, that there are a lot of people are either, I mean, most of them are young. A lot of them are either like Asian or they're part Asian. Not all of them, unless they tell me otherwise. But yeah, so I just found out, like, yeah. But Brad is on my Discord server as well, so hop over there and say hello. Yeah, anyway, yeah, thank you guys. Don't forget to hop on my Discord server and tag me with your suggestions as to what would make good prizes to give away on my Twitch channel, because I want to be able to reach out to different sponsors and give them my thoughts and see if they can help out in exchange for exposure over here. So Edge of Night knives is a great idea, so I'm going to start hunting for someone who can sponsor us some knives for this. But yeah, but yeah, let me know if you've got any other ideas. Hop over to Discord and yeah, just have a good time. Also, don't forget my next campfire stories this Saturday night. I got sent through a pretty cool story just in the last couple of days, but if you've got any good stories, doesn't have to be a personal story, but that would be really cool. But you know, just kind of like weird and wonderful stories as well that we can just share and just kind of like freak each other out with on a Saturday night Sydney time. Otherwise, yeah, come with your food questions or anything else, and yeah, and I'll see you then. But my next broadcast is in 2 days, so I look forward to seeing you Friday 12:30 Sydney time, and have a good one in between. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you later. Ciao.